Good evening. Welcome back to my Ask Me Anything. So, here to answer your questions to help you not have a heart attack or stroke. I was playing around with ChatGPT this weekend, and that's what the story was today. I plugged in one of my pictures and made it do the Studio Ghibli, which is trending right now all over Twitter and such. So, pretty fascinating. Have one where it made me into the Simpsons, a South Park character, a couple other things. So maybe I'll share those ones a little bit later. But teaching myself as much AI as I can before the AIs replace doctors and such. Don't think that's really going to happen, but I'm staying way ahead of the game. So saw some great questions tonight, so we'll jump in there and start answering them. So first question tonight is, what is the best diet for someone with heart disease? The short answer is anyone that you could potentially stick to, but there is no particular diet that everyone should follow. So what I start with my patients is, if you know your maternal haplotype because you've done some genetic testing, start there. That tells you what kind of mitochondrial engines you have and what potential fuel sources you might optimize to be run on. Then depends on where you live in the world. If you live at the equator, carbohydrates are probably going to be fine for you. If you're living, very northern latitudes and the ground freezes, you're probably more animal-based in that time of the year. Or at least that's what your ancestors would have been. That's what you want to try to recreate, is eat the foods that are seasonally appropriate to the environment that you live in. Then I usually have a couple rules for people, and rules, can be broken, but ideally only eat during daylight hours. Don't eat 3 to 4 hours before you go to bed. That's to ensure that the gut and liver clocks shut off for the night. Timing of meals is one of the biggest zeitgebers for you, time givers. The other is the light that enters your eyes. Make sure you're getting enough dietary protein to maintain the muscle mass that you want to hold on to. Ideally, that's a gram of protein for the pound of ideal body weight. And then you should be eating enough omega-3s for your eye and your brain. I've heard up to 30% of your brain and 60% of your retina is made up of DHA, and you need that through cold water marine sources from the majority of that intake. So that's what I start with, and then everything else is based off of what the person's goals are and their genetics. Particularly ApoE has a little bit of impact on what type of fats the person may be able to tolerate. And then if they do cholesterol balance testing, they can see how well they're absorbing the current fats that they're actually eating. Next question up tonight, is a far infrared sauna as beneficial as a traditional steam sauna? Sauna therapy has a lot of literature behind it at reducing all-cause mortality, particularly cardiovascular mortality. The greatest benefit is the infrared heat that comes from these devices. So pick your favorite modality to get the infrared heat. So is it a traditional sauna? Is it a wood-burning sauna? Is it an infrared sauna? Or is it a steam sauna? They're probably equal in comparison for the infrared light. But one thing that I'd be very careful with is, what is the water source for the traditional steam sauna? If it's municipal water and you're then heating up fluorinated water, I probably would not want to be in a room full of steam that is heavily fluorinated. The fluoride disrupts the oral microbiome. It affects the thyroid function, affects brain function, can affect the mitochondria's ability to produce energy. So be very careful with the water source in the steam sauna. Next question tonight. How important is blood glucose variability and range when it comes to heart disease? Great question. The only way you can get that information is with a continuous glucose monitor. And Dexcom came out with a system where it's direct to consumer, where you can get these monitors for about $49 each. So it's the cost-effective way to do this type of biohack. I recommend people consider it because then they can figure out what foods they're potentially more sensitive to. But more importantly, how much does blue light affect their blood sugar? How much does stress? How much does lack of optimal sleep? Those are the bigger things that I think people don't always take account of that affect their blood sugar. Ideally, fasting glucose should be 80, 85, and you really shouldn't increase more than 15 points over whatever your baseline glucose is. Really don't want to see blood sugars over 110, 120, if at all possible, and particularly not over 140. The higher the glucose, the more oxidative stress, which drives endothelial dysfunction and inflammation. The more you damage your arteries with high glucose, the more likely the person will develop atherosclerosis in the future. So, great question. Next question up tonight. Questions regarding heart damage from strep throat. Person that had undiagnosed strep for 3+ weeks. So was big of a problem in the early 1900s before the advent of antibiotics. Scarlet fever could cause issues with the mitral valve, but that's much less common these days. The immune response to the infection caused antibodies that then would damage the valve tissue. But if you've had an infection, your inflammatory markers, including hsCRP, will increase. That's expected. The vascular system is kind of the transporters for the things in the immune system. But sometimes the glycocalyx gets damaged in that process. So won't know until you're kind of fully recovered if there's any long-term effects, but you can look at, is your blood pressure normalized? If you have access to testing that looks at arterial stiffness, like pulse wave velocity, if you're monitoring your sleep, is your HRV back to your normal baseline? Those are things that can tell you, are you back to homeostasis? All right, what's my opinion on Nattokinase Serrapeptase? Useful for patients that have high fibrinogen levels. If you have high fibrinogen, colloquially I sometimes joke, your blood is like ketchup, more likely to clot. You want your blood to be like red wine. So nattokinase can help break up fibrinogen. Interesting study, much higher doses than normal. It's well over 10,000 forming units. That may have an effect on decreasing atherosclerosis or decreasing plaques, but I would like to see that trial repeated before people really follow that protocol. The other challenge is that when you start using those high dose nattokinase, there's not a lot of vendors that make them at that dose, so you got to take 5 times the normal dosing, and then the cost really starts to escalate from there if you don't have a high potency brand. And then the last pre-submitted question is nicotine supplementation safe for those with stents? But backtrack to ask initially, what is the goal? Why are you using nicotine therapy? If it's nicotine replacement therapy because you're weaning yourself off cigarettes or vaping, risk benefit, the benefit is greater than the risk at that state. But if you're using it more for a nootropic, it depends. Is it raising your blood pressure significantly? How are you administrating the nicotine? Is it a gum patch? Is it a troche? Is it one of the kind of the oral buccal mucosa kind of delivery devices? It depends. I've definitely seen some people do some damage to their gum lines if they are using the oral nicotine products enough that they may need oral surgery. It's probably having an effect on the oral microbiome if you're using the nicotine that way as well. So it may be affecting nitric oxide pathways. And then nicotine at a certain dose is going to likely cause increasing blood pressure in people. So if you have hypertension to begin with, then nicotine should be minimized if you can, unless you're using it to get off cigarettes. Somebody says, for 15 minutes outside at sunrise and sunset, does direction you face have any bearing or simply be outside? Short answer is just be outside. Some people live in valleys or they got big trees or buildings that are blocking direct sight of the sun. The light is going to reflect off various surfaces and get into your eyes. So just the goal is to be outside. But if you're facing the sun, then more photons are going to hit you on your receptors in your retina. So, doesn't matter exactly, but if you have the ability to face east in the morning and west in the evening time, try to do that. All right. Well, that might be a short and sweet one because I don't have any other questions coming in on the comments at the moment. So I'll wait a couple minutes. If it pops up, I'll answer them. But for those that are joining, I said that I was playing around a lot with ChatGPT over the weekend. That's what that Studio Ghibli picture of myself was in the story today. Wait till you see the Simpsons and the South Park version of myself. They were pretty hilarious. So, AI is pretty incredible. I probably spend more time than I want researching the greatest and latest on the tools. I listened to the there's like a IBM panel of experts every Friday morning that's been like an hour explaining all the newest breakthroughs in AI that week. And sometimes it's very technical, but I worked in IT before I went to medical school, so I usually can kind of keep up with it. So it's interesting, but it's not anytime soon going to replace me. But I'm pretty close to have developed a virtual Dr. Twyman that can answer many questions that I previously answered on either these Instagram lives or on previous podcasts that I've done. So, and then somebody I know very well is asking me about, is Grok any good? Yes, Grok's pretty good. It depends on what the use case is. I mean, there's ones that have definitely improved versus Grok's ability to do coding. I'm not a coder. I never took any computer science classes when I was in my undergrad. But, Grok is pretty decent at Python, but there's other companies that are making ones that are faster for this new kind of, quote, vibe coding. But for general information that is not very censored, Grok is pretty good. I've been previously asked, could you upload labs to Grok and have it interpreted and be better than your doctor? The short answer is no, I've done that. It was nowhere near my type of interpretation. It gets you a good starting point. It can educate you on what numbers you need to kind of really pay attention to and give you some basics. But you need to really know the person's kind of family history. You need to know what imaging tests they've had. You need to know what kind of vascular testing they've had. Then you can infer what the labs actually mean. So it's a good starting point for many, but Grok is not your doctor just yet. All right. Well, while waiting to see if any other questions come in, my YouTube channel is just drtwyman.tv. It'll link over there. All the previous Ask Me Anythings are generally hosted there. They're run through AI, so there's going to be a transcript. There will be a list in the description of the questions asked. It's not yet searchable to find out previous questions, but if you just search YouTube Dr. Twyman, you usually can find one of my videos that will describe something you're interested in. And then eventually that's where more of my long form videos that I've been working on, that's where they're going to get housed. So that's some good, oldie ones. The ones where I've interpreted my own labs are usually pretty good at kind of helping people understand how I interpret things for them when they come see me at my office. And then the video on my YouTube channel called No Time to Die, that goes through all the testing that I usually do in my office to test people, to tell them what their vascular health is. So if you're interested in understanding that or ultimately potentially becoming one of our patients, which we still have some availability, but as my team lets me know, my availability is getting pushed further and further out into the future. So right now I think we're booking out into June if patients want to work with us, but we still do have some capacity. So if you're interested in that, just look at my website, drtwyman.com. There's an application there, and somebody from my team will get in touch with you and kind of walk you through the onboarding process if you're interested in working with us. So I appreciate your guys' time and attention as always. I'll be back here next Monday, 6 p.m. Central Time, answering your questions, helping you not have heart attacks and strokes. Have a great week, guys.